monarchs, they're a little like, the monarch is, it's a bit like the gateway bug, if you don't mind the pun. And I thought, what a great opportunity to really expand people's knowledge and appreciation of the pollinators around us. And the swallowtail group seemed like an obvious next step. And so I mentioned this to a friend and counterpart, Joe Roberts from the David Suzuki Foundation, and he said, you really need to speak with Clement Kent. And Clement and I had crossed paths at a few conferences, at BCon in particular, but I don't think we'd ever really exchanged more than a few words. So Joe put us in touch, and Clement and I met at this lovely little Middle Eastern cafe in his neighborhood, which is where our co-working space used to be. And we got to meet, and we talked about swallowtails, and realized we both essentially had the same vision and no funding. And so at that point, that's kind of where we left it off, on the back burner, but simmering away in both of our imaginations. And so that was, I think, back in the summer of 2018. And in that time, Clement, as you probably all know, made some really good headway in making this project a reality, which brings us to what it is today. And so here we have roughly our project area in West Toronto, which are our neighborhoods. We've got Parkdale and Liberty Village and Roncesvalles and High Park and Christie Pitts and many, many neighborhoods in West Toronto. And all the dots you see here are participants. So either individual participants, block ambassadors, community groups, and we're also getting school groups involved. And so we now have over 350 people participating in the project, as well as close to a dozen community groups. And behind all of this is a really wonderful group of collaborators. And really the strength of Project Swallowtail is the fact that it is collaborative. And so we have quite a few organizations. These are some of the most active ones, of course, but also some wonderful individuals who are contributing their time. So Pete Ewens, who's a biologist formerly with World Wildlife Fund Canada. We also have Lorraine Johnson, one of our preeminent native plant gardeners and writers. We also have Colleen Cirillo, who's my co-presenter today, who's very kind and agreed to take on a short-term contract to help this project out. And we also have, let's see, who am I missing, Colleen, in the individuals that are helping us out on this steering committee?
Well, Ryan is with World Wildlife Fund, but he's been a big part of it. And I would mention also Sarah Winterton, who at the start was very involved.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so Ryan is still very much involved officially through WWF. And he, you would have probably, anyone who was ordering plants in spring with Project Swallowtail would have most likely been in touch with Ryan, who's basically our head botanist unofficially at Project Swallowtail. And I also will take this moment to give you a bit of background on the funding that's made it possible. So Clement found a lovely individual who very generously donated $10,000 to get Project Swallowtail started, and that flowed through World Wildlife Fund. And that made the first plant orders possible and made a lot of the initial activities possible. And really, it really got the whole project started. That's really what got it started. And then after that, that initial donation attracted a few other donations. And then in August, Pollinator Partnership Canada, which is the charity I work for, we very gratefully received a grant from the Ontario Trillium Foundation. And that's given us the opportunity to sort of take on the administrative responsibilities for the project and carry it on for at least the next 12 months, but hopefully much longer than that. And so the steering committee is comprised of the individuals we just mentioned, these organizations, this financial support. And we come together and share ideas, share resources, and really help guide this project. But I think most of all, just create a space where a lot of this can happen, because this really is the result of so many people having really great ideas and helping each other realize them, which is what I love about this project. It's really, really collaborative. And so it all started really got started this spring, early spring. And this is actually, as you would imagine, a photo from 2019, because no one is wearing masks and everyone is outside in close proximity. And this is what we imagined Project Swallowtail would look like. Lots of outdoor events, farmers markets, street festivals, neighbors having tea in their neighbor's garden, knocking, going door to door, all of that great stuff. This was our vision. This was really what was keeping us warm in the winter nights of last winter. But then, of course, COVID hit, and we quickly had to switch gears. And so instead of having all these in-person plant swaps that we'd initially imagined, we had to quickly switch over, and a lot of the first few months were spent online, as we're doing now. So this will be very familiar to all of you who have been attending these Zoom meetings. It also posed some pretty big logistical challenges, because our very first activity was the first plant order. And so this was organized by Ryan at World Wildlife Fund. And his challenge was that he had some very strict guidelines to work within from his organization. And so instead of having plants sent to one house and then having neighbors come and pick the plants up from their neighbor's place, every order had to be delivered to each person's door and with contactless delivery. So that had added a lot of logistics and also a lot of expense. So that took a while to figure out, but it happened. And over 75 people ordered over 800 plants, including many of the host plants for the swallowtail butterflies, and particularly the herbaceous ones. So the yellow pimpernel, which you see here, as well as golden alexanders. But of course, other nectar plants were included. But that's not all that happened on the spring planting front. Many of you will be familiar with Pete Ewan's pictured here. And Pete is really a force to be reckoned with, because he basically has a home nursery. He grew over 800 plants this past spring and distributed them for free to Project Swallowtail participants, to friends, and to neighbors throughout our project area and beyond. And he did this just so well and with such enthusiasm. So here you see a bit of his process, the seed trays with the squirrel protection on top. And on the right, you see the plants first germinating, and then he transfers them to containers. And I love it because he's recycling and he's making do with what he has. So old coffee bags and yogurt containers. I received many of these gift plants myself, and I have to say I really appreciated the thoughtfulness he put into it and his really intelligent use of containers. And so Pete, as I said, he pushed out another 800 native plants into the project. Also on the spring planting front, we started a Facebook group for Project Swallowtail. And I have to say, Colleen's been really the force behind it. She's so good at engaging people in conversation, sharing news, sharing updates, sharing events, sharing photos, and really making it an active community space. And one of the things that's come out of this community space is the weekly plant swap. And that was Lorraine's initiative. So every Friday, Lorraine would start a new thread inviting people to offer extra plants they have or request particular plants they were looking for. And so I'm guessing a few hundred plants went from friend to friend, neighbor, from one friend to a new friend through this online plant swap. And of course, we cannot forget our dear Clement's expedition out into the native plant nurseries to pick up some specific host plant. Oops, I got a typo in there, a couple of extra P's. But Clement went out and brought back to downtown Toronto some host plants, particularly some hop trees, I believe, and some pipevine. I might be mistaken, but I definitely wanted to point that out. And one of the other things that happened early on in the project was the creation of a plant and butterfly guide. So this guide, it has a bunch of information on the different swallowtail species as well as their host plants. And it also has a guide of the plants that were going to be made available through the spring delivery with some planting information. And so at our next spring, when we have another plant order, this is going to be updated to reflect the new plants that will be available then. So this is a resource that's available online for free, of course, and people can refer to it as they wish and as needed. Also with the idea that it will be updated with every new plant order. And then, so now we're into summer. And so all these plants, thousands of plants have now gone into the community, into people's gardens, through the official plant order, through WWF, as well as through the plant swaps, Pete's Nursery, and through Clement's expedition. And one of the gardens that received some Project Swallowtail plants was this little city parkette at the corner of Queen West and O'Hara, which is in my neighborhood. So I used to walk by this place a long time, and there's a historical plaque in this little parkette that tells you about the neighborhood. And it used to be right beside the Coffee Time, which closed down, and the Popeyes opened. And long story short, the garden that was there got ripped out when it shouldn't have been. So the BIA got involved, and through the BIA, Angel Beatty from Parkdale Green Thumb Enterprises really stepped up, and with her social enterprise, received these plants from Project Swallowtail and turned this sort of somewhat forgotten city parkette into a really beautiful testament to, or I should say, a celebration of Black Lives Matter with native plants. And so her organization planted the native plants over a few days, and then there were still a bunch of plants left over from that. We just had so many native plants in this project. We were looking for places to plant them, and so she had the great idea of offering them for free for the neighborhood. In particular, Parkdale, not everyone has access to native plants, especially not at an affordable price. Lots of people with balconies or that don't really have access to green space. And so the idea was to make this, just offer it for free and invite people into the community and into the plant community. And it went really, really well. Lots of plants were given away, including with some tote bags that you see here in the picture with some soil. And we had Ryan, who was on hand to also give people tips on planting in small spaces. So a lot of these plants are going to end up on balconies, and I'm happy to say that we have the expertise in the project to help people plant native plants in containers and on balconies. So this was another beautiful initiative that Project Swallowtail was able to support, and that we are very grateful to be a part of. And now I'm actually going to pass it over to Colleen, who's going to tell you about the block ambassadors in particular.
Sure. Thanks, Kathleen. So I had the great pleasure of getting to know a bunch of our super volunteers, which we call block ambassadors. And I guess that's kind of pretend. I'm a block ambassador. I'm not that super, but some of them really are, including like Pete, who's done so much, and so many others. Some of them are experienced gardeners like Pete and Sandra. Sandra, I think, is on the session tonight. And Kathleen mentioned that we have some expertise about native plant gardening on balconies and in containers. And I would say that Sandra Pella, who was the head gardener at TVG, is one of those people that can offer that kind of expertise. So That's wonderful to have those really experienced gardeners, but we also have some people that are brand new to gardening. And there are different motivations that people have for joining as a regular participant or as a block ambassador. And I think it's pretty cool and courageous that we have a few block ambassadors that are brand new to gardening, including a woman named Darlene, who is just this firecracker around Bickford Park, who's done so much. And then another woman who's new to Parkdale, who wanted to get to know some of her neighbors, so she decided to join, and instead of just becoming a regular participant, decided to become a block ambassador. And another young mom who reached out to us because she came to our plant giveaway, met us, thought it was really cool, had been thinking about doing some kind of pollinator planting with her kids. And she's turned out to be really, really quite active as well. She's brought a couple of her neighbors into our project. So just stepping back a bit, the role of block ambassador is kind of fluid, but generally these are people that are really interested in the project and have some connections. They want to bring people in, so they act as a bit of a hub and as like the super connectors. And as we've mentioned, a lot of the plans we had for in-person meetings changed, but neighbors are still able to talk with one another outside in their gardens and on the sidewalk. We have these bi-weekly sessions where we get together, block ambassadors. There are about 50 people that signed up as block ambassadors, which is pretty amazing, but really about 15 of them are active and participating in our bi-weekly sessions. And these are Zoom sessions where we get together and we talk about our projects in our neighborhoods. Some of us have pretty big teams, others like myself have small teams. It really isn't about the number, it's about the quality of the relationships. And having these Zoom sessions just allows us to inspire ourselves, get ideas, and also assist. Maybe someone on my team is balcony gardening and I don't have that expertise, but Sandra does. So it's a nice way to connect with ourselves. So we have our own little team of block ambassadors, and then each of us has a team of regular participants. Maybe one person on our team, maybe 10 people on our team. It doesn't matter, it's all good. There are some benefits to being a block ambassador. You get first dibs at things, like we set up these seed starting kits, and at first we were going to make them just available to block ambassadors, but we had enough supplies to make them available more broadly. But we first offered them to block ambassadors. Also, Pollinator Partnership is going to be offering this incredible training, and again, we are first going to offer to block ambassadors because we really want to up their game with their understanding of pollinators and plant pollinator connections. And then if there's more space, then regular participants will also be invited. The idea is to really create leaders and then have them go out. And we're all learning together, which is great. No one knows it all. And so it's been a real pleasure to work with these enthusiastic block ambassadors. Just some examples of things they've done. And we're totally not taking credit for this. A lot of these things were in place before we came on the scene, before we had them participate in Project Swallowtail. And we hope we're just amplifying the message and increasing the impact that we're all having. So some examples of block ambassador activities are gardening in each other's gardens, offering advice to one another, also some alley gardening and some park gardening and community gardening. I mentioned a woman named Darlene. I don't know if she's part of your group, but she's been doing a lot in Bickford Park. In that park, there is a butterfly garden. There is a fairy garden. Pawpaws were just planted. What's really cool about Darlene is, well, there's so much, but one thing she's done for us is she's connected us with these Indigenous artists and educators. If you go to Bickford Center and Bickford Park, you will see some really beautiful work that's happening there. And we're just trying to support them, and then they also support us. So we post about their activities. There was supposed to be a joint event happening to celebrate the work that's going on there. That's going to now have to wait until the spring. I think that's about all I wanted to mention about the block ambassadors, that they have different motivations and they have different activities. But it's been a tremendously positive experience getting together with this group. We have our last block ambassador Zoom session tomorrow. So if you're a block ambassador on the call, please attend if you can. And if you can't, don't worry, I will send some notes. And then we will probably, you know, have minimal communication through the winter, but all block ambassadors have allowed us to share their contact information with the other block ambassadors. So you can even get together on your own, regardless of whether Project Swallowtail staff, steering committee members are part of it. And that's it. I think I'm supposed to talk about maybe the seed starting kits or the leaf. Okay, so one other thing I wanted to mention was we were able to distribute a lot of herbaceous, a number of herbaceous plants, both species, a number of species, and a number of actual plants in the springtime. But we all know that a number of our, especially moths and, well, moths, butterflies, bees, a number of our insects rely on woody plants as well. Instead of creating a new system or process for distributing woody plants, we thought we would partner with LEAF, Local Enhancement and Appreciation of Forests, and just promote the great work they do. So they have a very long-standing process for getting native plants into people's gardens. And this fall, we had a joint campaign, Project Swallowtail campaign. You can still go on their website to see the campaign. It was a communications initiative and also just really trying to drive people to the ordering of trees and shrubs through LEAF. And I have a little bit of information about how many trees and shrubs have gone in that have gone in already or have been ordered for the Project Swallowtail jurisdiction. It's not a huge number, but hopefully now LEAF is on the radar of people that live and work in Project Swallowtail's jurisdiction. And so right now, like on this site, you see, or sorry, on this slide, you see a serviceberry, and that's Jode from David Suzuki Foundation chalking a serviceberry early on in the spring, just to let people know that is a serviceberry. And then you see a red oak leaf with a hickory tussock moth caterpillar on it. And then the big picture is of a chokeberry. So all of these woody species will host the larvae of moths and caterpillars. And if you're moths and butterflies, sorry. And if you're a big fan of Talame like myself, you know that species or that genus mentioned featured in the middle, the oak, is #1 for hosting caterpillars. So yeah, we just wanted to promote woody plants in our jurisdiction to go along with all of the soft-stemmed or herbaceous ones that we had sent out in the spring. So one project that really took off, and it was just something we thought, oh, we'll just try this out, but I didn't realize how successful an engagement tool this would be. And these are inspired by Pete, who inspires so much of what we do because he tries it all in his garden. He just seems fearless with just going to try it out and see how it works. And as Kathleen mentioned, he had great success with his backyard nursery. So we decided to offer seed kits, but we don't have a lot of money, as you know, as is the case for a lot of environmental initiatives. So we put out a request for donations, which was another cool way for people to engage with their native plants in their garden. So people provided us with, people in our jurisdiction and beyond, provided us with seed for 40 species of native plants, herbaceous. And I was able to package up 150 packets. Some of those also came from North American Native Plant Society. If you aren't aware of that group, I'd encourage you to go to their website, nanps.org, North American Native Plant Society. They also donated a large number of seeds. And we got some mesh to act as protection for the squirrels, because we all know there are many squirrels in this jurisdiction. And we had a donation of trays, I think from some of you guys. So thank you. If I'm forgetting your name. If you've contributed any of the seeds, the trays, please know that we're very grateful. So we were able to put together all of these things. We also got the soil donated, and these are all set up in my backyard now. And people can sign up, or they have signed up, 37 of them. Some are getting more than one, to pick up all of these supplies that they require to then grow native plant seeds in their backyard or on their balcony through the winter. It's a very simple process that Pete outlined in his webinar. That webinar is available on the Pollinator Partnership YouTube channel. So if you didn't sign up for a kit, but you'd like to still try and do this in your backyard, I'd encourage you to watch Pete's webinar that's available on the YouTube channel. And you can also contact us, because I imagine I'm still going to have some seed left over. Even if I don't have trays or mesh to share with you, I will definitely have seeds left over for you. So this is just a fantastic way to engage people through the winter. We'll probably communicate with them in November, and then again come late February or March about the kits. And it's also a great way to produce native plants that will go back into our gardens. Everyone who takes the tray, we're asking them to donate back 50% of the plants that are successful. And then we will donate those for free. We will donate those to groups and individuals within the Project Swallowtail jurisdiction. That's it. Oh, Kathleen, you're muted.
Sorry about that. Thanks, Colleen. Yeah, and so as Colleen just mentioned, we have some wonderful webinars. So there was a spring series that was hosted by WWF, and those are all on their YouTube channel, and that's called Gardening for Wildlife. And that's where you can find Ryan talking about container gardening with native plants. And this fall series, we kicked it off with Pete and his From Seeds to Seedlings webinar. So that's a great resource for anyone who's going to be starting native plants from seed this winter. That was followed by Sandra Pella's wonderful webinar on Leave the Leaves, and that's all about how to take care and maintain our gardens in the fall and get them ready for winter in a way that's pollinator friendly and soil friendly and all of that. She also has great recommendations for bulbs for those who are interested. And then our third webinar was by none other than Colleen. So for any of you who have ever dealt with invasive species in your home garden or community garden or anywhere, check that one out, because Colleen really knows what she's talking about, and she has some great advice for how to deal with invasive species in the garden. And then our last webinar of this series, of the fall series, will be this Thursday with Ryan Godfrey from WWF, and that one will be on community monitoring. So some of you might know it as citizen science or community science, and it'll be an introduction to the topic and how to participate, which is one thing that we haven't gotten into quite yet in Project Swallowtail, but that we have lined up starting next spring, which are ways for participants to engage in community science. We'll also have 2 university researchers, a master's students and a postdoc, doing some work through the project. And so they'll be looking for gardens to recruit for their research. So now more information very soon on that topic. So for the webinar series, they're available on the Pollinator Partnership YouTube channel. And once I get to doing some updates on the Project Swallowtail website, they'll also be up there. So we had a fall planting event, or events, I should say. So in the spring, people ordered plants for their individual gardens. This fall, with the Trillium grant and with some of the WWF money, we focused on giving plants for free to community groups. And I think that went really, really well. I think we have over 650 plants that were distributed to our community and to our community friends, including to Kathy's Garden, including to Bickford Park and to many others. And we're looking forward to seeing these plants establish and grow, and also give back, because they'll be able to, we'll be able to collect the seeds from those plants once they're mature and get more seed kits going and then plant those out. So you can see we've got this whole scheme where we put plants in the community, we grow them out, the seeds produce, and then we grow more plants in the community. Which brings me to our future plans and what we have in store. So as Colleen mentioned, we're going to go a bit quiet over the winter, though definitely not radio science. We'll be in touch with our participants. We'll definitely be in touch with our seed tray stewards over the winter. But one of the things we'll be offering is the opportunity to become certified as a pollinator steward. So this is a Pollinator Partnership Canada program. It involves a training over, well, we used to do it in person. Pre-COVID, we used to do this in person. It was 2-day workshop with guest speakers and site visits. And once you've done that 2-day workshop, you had 6 months to do one outreach activity and one habitat activity. And then you'd submit those for review, and then you'd be a certified pollinator steward. So we have lots of partners in agricultural organizations or in the energy transmission and energy generation sector that are training as pollinator stewards. We also have a lot of gardeners and landscape architects. And so this is something I wanted to make available primarily to our block ambassadors. As Colleen was describing, block ambassadors, they really are our super volunteers. And part of this project is to create a space where people who have the interest, who have the enthusiasm, who have the vision can come together, support each other, share ideas, share their creativity, and also be supported by the steering committee, by the project, with not only resources like plants, but also with some of the technical expertise that can really make a good project excellent. And so this is what the PSC, the steward certification, is all about. So we'll be offering a training session to our block ambassadors this winter, so probably late January, early February. And it will be online, so we'll probably have it, instead of 2 days intensive, we'll have one module a week for 8 weeks. And of course, we have a lot of ideas. Our block ambassadors have a lot of ideas. Our participants have a lot of ideas. And so we want to keep growing the project. And that means more people, more streets, more gardens, more medians, more balconies, more parks, more community gardens, all connected through this project, and connecting all of these important habitat sites to each other through our relationships and through the plants and through the pollinators. And so, yeah, we look forward to a year where we're just getting started really with Project Swallowtail. So there's a lot of room to grow. I know Clement share this idea, the model of Project Swallowtail, with some people in Montreal. We're looking to expand it, Pollinator Partnership that is. We're looking to expand it into British Columbia, where our Director of Science, Dr. Laura Mirandon, lives. And so, yeah, we're really, we're just getting started, and that's it. So I do invite anyone who's interested in finding out more to visit our project page at projectSwallowtail.ca. I do need to make some updates, so if you wait about a week, all the videos for all the webinars will be up there, but you can also find them on the YouTube channel. You can also sign up at projectSwallowtail.ca. And I say that knowing that many of the members of the Hort have already been recruited by Clement. And so a special hello to all of you who are doing double duty tonight, both as Project Swallowtail participants and as Hort Society members. And I also want to say a big thank you in particular to the support that the Hort Society has provided, both through the participation of the individual members as block ambassadors, or in particular Clement, who's provided so much guidance and expertise and ideas and resources, but also for being an organization in the city that really does promote an ever evolving and expanding vision of what it is to garden. So I really appreciate starting the meeting off with land acknowledgement. And that really is in the spirit of Project Swallowtail. So thank you so much for that. And yeah, let's turn it over to questions and comments and less blabbing from me.
I'm just going to say thank you to Kathleen and Colleen, and to Pete and Ryan and Jode and Lorraine and all the other wonderful advisors and participants from all these collaborating groups. As Kathleen has emphasized, it's been wonderful to have the Hort be able to help initiate a broad coalition of groups, because the whole is much greater than the sum of the parts. So I'm going to now unmute everybody, and please bring in your questions. And I'm not sure who wants to start. See, Barbara.
I just want to thank them, everybody again. It was just way more exciting to hear everybody, all of the groups that are pulled together. It was just it was just very heartening how it just sort of evolved and got bigger and bigger and bigger. And thank you everybody for being a participant.
Thanks, Mary-Lise. Actually, maybe we could ask for a show of hand. Who here is already a part of Project Swallowtail? Either lift your real hand up or you can use your little raise hand function. Yes, Linda, I recognize you. You've been on BA calls. And Helen, of course. And Peggy. Oh. And Anne, of course. Yes, yes. So many great participants. Oh, wonderful. Who here is maybe Project Swallowtail curious? Who's thinking of signing up? Okay, yeah, I'd love to hear from you. Why are you interested in joining, and what might be your hesitation at this point, if any?
Hi there, it's Heather. Oh, sorry. I live in Swansea, and I saw that map that you showed up, and you don't have a lot of people in Swansea. And I do have swallowtails in my garden, and I actually I'm tomorrow ripping up all of my front lawn. So I'm very interested in getting pollinator plants. So this is just very timely for me. So thank you.
Oh, that's wonderful. Awesome project, Heather. Good luck with the sod removals. It's very exciting.
Kathleen, maybe I'll take a first shot at why the Project Swallowtail area was concentrated. I think I was the wet blanket on all the other people who wanted to take it to all of the city all at once, because I said I'd really like to see it focused in an area where we could make significant improvements in the density of plants. And as Kathleen's been telling you, there's a bit of bootstrapping yourself here. You have to get a little bit of money, show some success, get a bigger bit of money, show some more success. I think, especially with COVID, we had about as much as we could handle with in this year. And I'm sure Kathleen can talk about, how the project might scale up. So what are your thoughts on that, Kathleen?
Yeah, that's a great question, Clement. It's still at this point very much, it's pretty organic. And one of the thoughts that just came as I listened to Heather describe her upcoming project and also tell us she's in Swansea, as Clement said, definitely the idea of having a specific geographic focus was really helpful because it gives us a chance to focus resources and also test out the idea of habitat connectivity. And actually, the postdoc who will be working with and through our participants, that is the question they want to answer. This whole idea of habitat connectivity actually hasn't really been tested as far as pollinators go. And it's a huge question. So this is Lisa Benche, and she will be working with Ryan Norris from the University of Guelph, who's done, his whole thing is animal migration. So they're an amazing team to have work on this topic. So that's kind of the thinking behind the area. But of course, we're also a community project, and the more the merrier, and the more plants out there, the better. So I'm thinking I do want to expand it, and I'm trying to think what the best way of doing that is so that we still have these local connections, but also have it be more inclusive and get more people in. And one of the thoughts that came to mind is maybe we can expand it to people who want to become block ambassadors, because when they join as block ambassadors, they'll really be helping to expand the project, because they'll also be recruiting other participants in their neighborhood. So that could be one way of doing it. But definitely welcome to ideas and thoughts and discussion on that.
I might also add that it's been really interesting to find out about the other groups doing similar work in the GTA, like Blooming Boulevards in Mississauga, and I think it's called Cliff Crest Butterfly Way in Scarborough by the lake. And I'm sure there are many others. And everybody's doing things slightly differently, but all working towards the same goal of a new way of gardening, and gardens as basically nature reserves. So we can kind of learn from one another. Just as we were doing webinars about seed starting, so was Blooming Boulevards. Just as we were collecting seed, native plant seed from gardens and natural areas, if there are any native plants still left in the natural areas, so was Blooming Boulevards over there in Mississauga. So it's just been lovely to realize how there are quite a few people working towards the same goals. It's been tremendously hopeful in a time where we all need more hope. And my daughter just brought me a tea, which I'd like to say never happens. So I feel very lucky tonight. She's almost 18, so.
I'd like to add in here, if anybody listening has connections to a funding organization that you think we should be talking to about increasing our funding base, we'd be delighted to hear about it. Because this is not something that Kathleen can do all on her own. And many of the people we have had who've been working very hard for us have been donating their time. And for some of them, they can't do that forever.
I really have to underscore the incredible generosity of people, not only the block ambassadors, but very much on the steering committee, Clement being one of them, Pete, Sandra, Colleen. Colleen's donated so much time. We managed to get her a part-time contract, but that was only for 3 months. And I know she's worked, and we couldn't even pay her what she's worth, you know. And she's like so very graciously and generously accepted and has put in way more hours. So this project really is beautiful, because it is the result of so many people coming together and giving their time. But it definitely helps to have some cold hard cash to keep things moving and get those plants in the ground.
So if you have an idea, you can send an email to, let's say, board at parkdale.hort.com. So that will reach the board members of the Horticultural Society, who will pass it on. Or you can go to the website, projectSwallowtail.ca, and I'm sure there's a contact method on that website that you could put it in there, and that will go straight to Kathleen, I believe. So who else would like to raise a comment, ask a question?
Can I just comment to respond to one of the chat comments? If someone's inquiring about a patch of dog strangling vine, they could send a note to me and we could talk about it. So my Gmail is colleen.cirillo@gmail.com.
Oh, I have a question on that actually. Why is it so rampant in my park? Why has it not been curtailed or burned or whatever? It's just all over the park.
Yeah, it's all over the ravines too, and they are. Wow, that was loud. And they have tried various control methods, but it is an extremely persistent invasive plant. There is a biocontrol agent that after 10 years of testing is being tried out in various places across Southern Ontario, but it is in small populations. They're testing it out. The moth doesn't, it's the caterpillar that feeds on the plant, but that's going to be a very long-term control mechanism if it indeed is even going to work long-term and over a large area. But in Toronto, the city spends some amount of time controlling invasives, not as much as I would like to. They still spend a lot of time growing annuals and flipping annuals every 2 weeks. And but there are things that some of our stewards can do. You know, there's that active group in High Park, but they were really told to only do a minimal amount of activities this year because of COVID. And the prescribed burn, which also helps with some invasives, was canceled this year.
I see that Sandra Pella and Peggy Lathwell have both got their hands up. Sandra, would you like to jump in?
I don't think I meant to hang up. I don't think I meant to put my hand up, but I can comment that there's lots of dog strangling vine, not only in the West End in Parkdale, but in many private gardens. And I have a feeling that, I mean, you could contact me as well if you wanted to on how I handle it. I mean, I deal with it in client gardens all the time. And on a larger scale, when I was at the Toronto Botanical Garden. And we just have to be vigilant, I guess. And yes, it's rampant in the ravine, and we can't give up, right? There's lots of different things we could be doing right now. So I don't know how much detail you want me to give. I know Colleen's, her webinar talks about it in great detail. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'd like to suggest that anybody who wants to learn about that, check out Colleen's webinar. So Colleen or Kathleen, tell us again how to get there.
Okay, so I still have to post it to YouTube, but the first two webinars are on the Pollinator Partnership YouTube channel. So if you just look for Pollinator Partnership in YouTube, you'll find it there. And by the end of the week, I'll have the Project Swallowtail page updated. So what I'll do is when that's all done, I can send it to you, Clement, and you can share it with everyone here through a newsletter or some such.
I'll give it a shot.
Awesome. Thank you.
Peggy, did you have a comment?
I didn't really. I had raised my hand in response to a question that went out. So
yes, Peggy is one of our Project Swallowtail participants.
Yeah, but I don't have anything to contribute. I'm sorry.
I forgot to mention that a cool thing that happened earlier, well, maybe late summer, was one of the block ambassadors who works at Downsview Park invited a bunch of block ambassadors to tour his large-scale restoration at Downsview Park. And that was really neat because we got a private tour. And it was all outdoors. It was all safe. We kept our social distance, whatever that's called. So it was a nice thing to do. It was outside the Project Swallowtail jurisdiction, but it just, it was a lovely tour of a large restoration project they're learning as they go. So there are some invasives that are coming in. There's work to be done, of course. You don't just plant it and let it go. It needs to be maintained, and it's really large, so you gotta have some budget to maintain it. But it was really cool to see how that is working out. And a bunch of us block ambassadors went together to tour. Peggy was one of them, right, Peggy?
Yeah, it was great, actually. It was very inspiring, plus, and beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the things I'd like to mention about Downsview Park is if you're a birder, a lot of migratory birds will stop there that you won't easily see elsewhere in the city. And they have bird records that are basically not found elsewhere in metropolitan Toronto. And there's a lot of birds that are breeding there that are not been seen in Toronto for a long time. One of the ones mentioned was the bobolink, because they have recreated large meadows, and these meadow-loving birds didn't have any large meadows left in Toronto.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the things I would like to ask Pete or Colleen or Kathleen to comment on is this people growing from seeds and then sharing them model, because there are precedents for that elsewhere in the city, and maybe one of you can talk about that.
Sorry, what was the question? That
What we're doing with asking people to grow native plants from seed and share them was actually brought up in some of our advisory meetings early on with an example from elsewhere in the city where they're already doing that. So
yeah.
Yeah.
Are you guys familiar with the Riverwood Conservancy out in Mississauga, which is a not-for-profit, but its partners are Credit Valley Conservation and the City of Mississauga. They do a program where, I can't remember the actual acronym, but it's kind of the same thing, is that they help homeowners that border the property to grow nature, basically. And so they provide them with all the essential supplies for seed starting kits, and then they plant them back in natural areas. And Pete knows more about it, but I know when I used to work with Credit Valley Conservation Authority on invasive species, it was a kind of model similar to ours where the homeowners get to keep some of the native plants and then some are sent back to the organization.
Yeah, that's right. It's called the NP3 model. I think the 3 refers to the 3 steps in the process. So you come and receive your plant tray and instructions. You go back at some point and see how it's going, and then a year later, when your plants are all germinated, you go back to the Riverwood evening, and half of those plants that have germinated under that guidance you get to keep for yourself or give to your friends, and the other half are actually used on the banks of the Credit River in the Riverwood Conservancy's restoration efforts. So it's a win-win-win. And we thought that was a great model. It worked for a number of years, and we just modified it a little bit. Without a prescriptive formula there, I think the whole point, as Kathleen and Colleen were talking about earlier, is to make readily available to people, on the street, in the neighborhoods, people who really don't know this stuff, through the guidance of the block ambassadors, make these plants available so they can get started and really see the benefits very quickly. So just increasing the volume and diversity of shade or sun-loving plants is one way we can do that, through growing our own plants.
I don't know if Ryan is with us. I don't see his name in the list. But as one of the people in the project who's worked with genetics, I will say that one of the enormous advantages of getting a number of plants in a neighborhood is that they begin to cross-pollinate, and you begin to develop a set of plants that can become more adapted to our city. And if many of us are growing them and sharing them around, that process will accelerate and will bring plants back up to sustainable levels of communities. Pete, I think you've got a lot of practice in thinking about that.
Yeah, that's right. I think the other benefit is actually, it's a bit like the, Trees Ontario and other programs like that around the world. You give a young grade 3 student a little tree in a pot to go home with, and they look at it and it develops into a big tree. And, that's an ignition switch for people's appreciation and motivation of improving what grows in your neighborhood. And it doesn't take very long before these native plants flower, and you start seeing insects that you never knew existed. And for young kids especially, but it applies to old farts like us too, it's a big surprise, and it's a big positive feedback when you see, wow, this is way better than just Kentucky bluegrass and concrete and pink flamingos.
Kathleen, one of the things that you didn't mention, maybe you can speak to it, is the idea about doing something positive for goldenrod.
Oh yeah, so one of the many initiatives that is, bubbling up in Project Swallowtail that the steering committee is tackling is, helping goldenrod's reputation. So I don't know how many of you have come across this either in your own experience or in conversation, but goldenrod looks feathery. People sneeze when it's blooming, and people think that goldenrod gives them allergies and makes them sneeze. And this is quite unfortunate, since goldenrod is not guilty of that at all. It's ragweed. It's just a lot more discreet, and so the blame gets passed on to the solidago. But goldenrod, as you probably have all noticed, is a hugely important plant for pollinators in the late summer and early fall. It's often the only thing, or one of the few things, that's blooming in the landscape. And there are lots of species of goldenrod, some much more well-behaved than the Canada goldenrod. And so the idea is to basically mount a bit of a PR campaign for goldenrod to help people learn to distinguish between it and ragweed, and understand that it's not the one that's making the sneeze, and also make them appreciate just not only how ecologically important this plant is, but how diverse the genus is, and how beautiful it is. And I have lots of zigzag goldenrod in my garden, and it's such a pretty plant. And I'm actually in Nova Scotia right now, and I have hardly seen any Canada goldenrod, but lots of zigzag goldenrod, including these beautiful understories that are just covered in it, and it's really beautiful plant. So that's one of the things that'll be coming out of the steering committee, is a PR campaign for goldenrod.
Right, so we're at 8:30 now. Ron, do you want to say any final words before we log off?
Yes, yes.
Could I make one last little comment to build off of Kathleen's? Speaking of goldenrod, so how many of you belong to the Facebook page called Toronto Gardeners? Hands up. Yeah, Anne and a few of you. So there are like 6,000 or so members, and it would be a great vehicle to help promote the project. I also believe that Lorraine Johnson is on it, because right now, actually, I'm quite honored. The cover photo is one of mine, and it's a fall photo with lots of goldenrod on it. And the reason it was chosen, Rana Fiore said, and Lorraine really sort of reinforced it, that the much maligned goldenrod is often, being held responsible for sneezing, and just everybody thinks it's a weed and rip it out. But to help promote its spread and appreciation of the beauty and so on. So if you want to take a peek, it's on Toronto Gardeners, and it's open to any gardener in the city. You're very helpful and generous with advice and knowledgeable and so on. But just to build on your point, Kathleen, about goldenrod and helping promote awareness of it. And thank you.
That's lovely. Thank you, Helen.
Okay, Ron.
Thank you. I'd like to thank everybody for joining us for this meeting tonight. Once again, our annual general meeting will be on Monday, November the 30th, 2020. That will be at 7 p.m. And then at the bottom of the hour at 7:30 will be Planet and the Earth's Tongues, presented by Dr. Andy Fayon. Dr. Andy Fayon is a geologist and a photographer and loves wildflowers. He has a unique perspective on plants and soil. Perhaps you've noted and wondered about the different plant types that occur in different areas. In this presentation, Andy will illustrate the influence of local geology on the types and distributions of some fascinating native plants. We'll see fabulous landscapes across Canada and look at the similarities and differences between plants that grow in these challenging environments. So once again, thank you for joining us for this meeting tonight. I want you to be safe in the upcoming month. If you would like to follow us, do so on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And also go to our website, www.parkdaletorontohort.com. And also, once again, if you want to get our newsletter, email us at newsletter@parkdaletorontohort.com. So I'd like to thank you all and have a great night.
Thank you.
you, Ron. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Good
Bye.
night.
Thank you, Colleen. Thank you, Kathleen. Love, love, love.